Today I'm joined by Will Chamberlain Weber. Will's the Managing Director of Chamberlain Dunn, an award-winning events company, which for the past 30 years has helped organisations reach their key audiences to deliver strong and effective messages through events. So welcome, Will.
Welcome, Simon. It's very good to be here and share my story with you and your audience. So I hope I can contribute in a positive way. I run a company, as you said, called Chamberlain Dunn. We are an award-winning events and design company, and we put on award ceremonies, conferences, campaigns, publications, all that stuff really. Most of our work is in the health, charities, and public sector, but honestly, the sort of skill set carries across into almost every industry really, and we have done work outside that main group that I mentioned, but that's where our kind of heart and soul is in the main. But we're always open to helping people that need our skill sets. And I suppose the one thing we try and do is make sure we understand the client's needs. It's their event, it's not ours. And we have to make sure that we help them communicate with their audience, whoever that might be.
Look, thank you for explaining more about what the organisation does. So, look, I always like to sort of go back and ask you about how you or why you went into business sort of first of all. So if you sort of think back 30 years or even before that, actually, let's go a bit further back. When you were at school, did you say, right, okay, I want to be a business owner? How did you turn out being a business owner?
Probably short answer, perversity. I think when I was at school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My father was a GP, and I did apply for medical school, not because there was peer pressure, but I didn't really know, and that seemed a starting point. But it turns out I wasn't quite the right sort of candidate, so I got rejected from that. And I ended up doing a degree in chemistry. Forgotten most of it now, but that was my starting point. And a very good friend of mine, and again, I was still faced with the same problem at the end of the degree. What would I do? And a very good friend of mine said, "Well, I'm going to do teacher training." So I thought, well, actually, that sounds like a good idea. I'd enjoyed school and so on. So I applied and got selected, and that was certainly an education in itself. And I taught for 3 years, and in fact, I taught probably more physics than anything, and I probably learned more about physics by teaching it than I ever did studying it, really. And then I found that the sort of attitude of I love the teaching and that sort of stuff, but the attitude of teachers and that sort of thing didn't sit with me. I couldn't identify with it, and I think I wanted to try and do something different and possibly more commercial. And so I was going on holiday, and I had a bad accident that meant, long story short, I meant spending some time in the library thinking about what do I want to do with my life. I'm interested in business and finance. And what kept on coming up was accountancy, and which was irritating because I really don't like taking exams. I've got a lot of them, but I find it a real struggle. But then I applied, and because that seemed like a good business education. And I got a training contract, and I worked in an accountants for 3 years. And then I joined a client which was called Sunsight. So they ran if you think of Eurocamp, which is probably the more common thing, it was sort of holidays, tented holidays, and then became mobile home holidays on campsites throughout Europe, mainly France, but Spain, Italy, and so on. And I really, really loved that job. I was a financial controller there, and we had a real blast. It was such a happy atmosphere. It was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. Um, Again, long story short, the owners decided they wanted to sell, sold out to Next, as in the high street brand, and then Next combined it with Eurocamp because they own Eurocamp, and then we were based in Dorking, and the company got closed there, and I was suddenly out of a job. And from there, I got a job working for the Royal College of Nursing's publishing company as the finance director there. And we were publishing a weekly nursing standard and other publications. And we were also organising the RCN's conference, and then we were doing book publishing. So a whole range of skills, really, because I would cover anything that wasn't production or editorial, because the job was, we were about 50 people or so, but there was a lot to do, and so on. So that's where I met my business partner, who's now retired, Alison, and we set up Chamberlain Dunn. As a result of that, we were there for about 5 years, and then we decided that we thought we could deliver something on our own, really, and we had the skill set between us, complementary, somewhat overlapping.
Well, what were the aspirations that made you sort of go, well, okay, do you know what, we're going to go into business ourselves? What was the drive behind that? Was it that you wanted to have your own business? Was it freedom? Was it to make more money? What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of those things, really. I think we were dealing with an organisation that didn't understand the commercial world, because we were working. Nursing Standard was number 2 in the market, up against Nursing Times, that was number 1 in the market, that was owned by Macmillan, and that was a huge commercial operation in the days when there were lots and lots of sort of classified ads and display ads and so on. And we were always on the back foot. The irony was, after we left, we did the sort of groundbreaking work that the company generated a lot of profits for the RCN in subsequent years, but it was quite tough, because I don't think, because they were nurses, why would they understand necessarily the world of commerce? And we had a grant from them. It was quite a tough time, and I think we felt that say between us that the corporate pressure was a lot, and I think we felt that we knew we had a lot of contacts within the healthcare world. Hence, that's where, as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the sectors that we major in, and that we could do something better and have a bit more control. And there was also get rich quick, but certainly we could be in charge of our own destiny to a larger extent. So that was kind of the motivation. I think I having, with my accountancy training, certainly seeing how various businesses worked, felt that we could have a good fist at it, really.
And okay, so that was 30 years ago. What would you say the biggest challenge that you've faced in being a business owner over that 30 years?
Oh, well, it's tough, because I mean, we started off with literally 2 computers, 2 phones, and a tiny serviced office in Richmond. And so day one, we kind of looked across each other at the desk, thinking, right, this is it. And I think we had a couple of ideas, and we started with some employment newsletters. So the internet was just starting up. A lot of information out there, but not in one place. And so we pulled together these employment newsletters, employing doctors and dentists, employing nurses and midwives, and so on, where you could get a snippet of what a new bill was about, or a new paper, or some new information. And if you wanted further information, you could get it, but it was a digest really, and that was a monthly subscription newsletter. And from that, uh, people wanted us to, could you do a conference on that, or suggested. So we thought, well, we've got the skills. We have run conferences before. And so we started to run conferences, and then people said, can you organize a conference for us? And so things started in that way. In terms of challenges, it's always about you know, juggling really. Can you do the job? Have you got the right people? How can you make a return on it? Because people's budgets, certainly in healthcare, are always small, and we always, I suppose, like to say they want a champagne experience on beer money sort of thing. So we've always had to be inventive in that way. Staffing, I mean, people come in. We've had some brilliant staff over the years. We've had, a few less good ones, shall we say? So I mean, those are sort of main challenging, and obviously trying to get new business, and constantly trying to where's the next bit coming from, as well as delivering on what the contracts you have existing.
And you mentioned team there as one of those things, sort of, growing the team. How big is your team now, Will?
Our team's smaller than it has been. We have about 8 people at the moment.
So,
And then I think if we have a big event, we have some freelancers who come in, and that can be, often it's friends and family, because they've either worked for us before, they know the standards that we have. But the core team is incredibly multi-talented. So we're very
so
good
thinking
at that.
back to when you first sort of employed your sort of first person, that because that can be quite a big step for a business to employ their first person. What was that a difficult decision to make, to say, well, actually now we're going to take somebody else in the business and we're going to be responsible for obviously paying their salaries and growing, or was it a natural thing that you just sort of went, we've got loads of business here, we need somebody to help us out?
Yeah, it was actually quite scary, because I think, there's the two of you, as I said, and we had a sort of bit of capital behind us, and we weren't really drawing on that. We were kind of sort of living on savings, really, trying to preserve our capital and invest wisely and all those sort of sensible things. But I think it became clear that we did need some help, and the idea was obviously we'd get a sort of an office, not junior, but it was just an office admin person really, to help
Yeah.
with some of the tasks that we just couldn't keep up with. And I do remember the lady's name. She was called Samantha, and I remember thinking, we can't afford to make a mistake here, because we're employing someone, and payroll and all that sort of stuff. And she was lovely, but she was one of these people who had a brain dump at the end of the day. So when you came in the next morning, any sort of information that had been imparted the day before had completely gone. And she used to say, in a sort of slightly sing-songy way, and what are we going to do today then? which was funny at first, but it was whatever. And sadly we had to get rid of her. But that's. And we replaced her with someone called Angela, who was absolutely brilliant, and so on. But it was quite it was a big step, and the fact that we did make a mistake. I mean, it wasn't you do in a high, you do occasionally make errors. I mean, that's everything looked okay, CV was fine, and all the rest of it, and you know, on paper she seemed fine, and started off well. You have a learning curve and so on, but it kind of never got beyond a certain level, and obviously in a small business, everyone counts. There's nowhere to hide or anything. You know, everyone has to be working at the right level, you know, even after a sort of training period. So yeah, that was a bit of an experience.
So talking about challenges, what would you say is the main challenge that your business faces today?
Well, I suppose the main challenge is cash, usually. People paying us, and obviously we work with some big organisations. So we're lucky we've never really had. They've got a couple of bad debts over the 30 years because the organisations are, you know, they're big, but they can pay slow. And of course, your suppliers are wanting money. So managing that is quite a big challenge.
You know, that's a really important thing for business, isn't it? Because a business can be profitable, but then fall over because of cash management. So yeah, really important to have things like that cash flow forecast and a great data collection sort of system and process in place.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is not new, but it is absolutely solid. Cash is king, because if you're not, you can whatever amazing work you're doing, if you're not getting the money in, you know, there's many examples of people not doing that, and with obviously sad consequences. And I think one of the lessons that I would have learned right from the get-go, and we didn't have, was that to put in place a proper financial system. And in a way, it was probably a bit lax on my part because I was an accountant, so I kind of thought I could manage it all in my head and on the side, and I could to a certain extent right early on, but um, it became increasingly difficult. And I think if I was kind of, I would certainly change that if I was, you know, it's definitely a challenge. Having up-to-date information, as you mentioned, you know, debtors, and there are times when cash flow is brilliant and I'm able to focus entirely on the business, the strategy, and all that sort of stuff, and that's great. And then there are times when it happens, it goes through cycles when things are a bit tougher and your efforts are distracted into managing the cash flow, and making sure that, you know, obviously we get paid.
There's a couple of things that that stood out to me in what you sort of said there. The first one is, yeah, look, quite often when businesses are smaller, we can run them, with in our head or on bits of paper or whatever. But as a business grows, it's about having the right systems and processes in place so that because it becomes increasingly difficult then to manage it off of how you managed it before. So yeah, I think what you highlighted there in terms of actually having those systems and processes in place so when it grows, from a financial perspective, but from other perspectives as well. But also the other thing that you mentioned there as well is actually if you've got those financial systems in place, it becomes a lot easier to forecast and spot areas where cash flow might get tight. And then you can take steps a lot sooner than suddenly realizing, looking at the bank account and suddenly realizing, oh, we haven't got any money today. Then it becomes a little bit more difficult to do it. So yeah, again, having those financial systems in place so you can see potential future challenges and take early action. So yeah, so like, there's some things that sprung to my mind when you were sort of sharing that. So thank you for doing that. And look, well, if one day you decided to step back, because you mentioned that your business partner, I think, has retired. So if one day you decided to step back or even exit the business, what would you want your legacy to be, both for the company and for the people in it?
Well, yeah, I mean, businesses of our size, you get people who with business owners who kind of regard it as another child, their baby, and so on, and can be very protective over it. I don't feel that because I just don't think that's realistic. But legacy wise, I think it would be. I would like it to get if you know, when I retire, whatever that time is. I would like it to continue, and it would be. That's something that currently working on, but and it could be a business could be sold, for example. It could be closed. I mean, those are kind of the exit things, or someone might want to buy into it and take it over as a going concern. My eldest daughter works in the same industry, so that's a potential, but. We've had a loose discussion on it, but she's in a different stage of her life and what she wants to do. So, but I would like it to continue because I think we've built a solid business, an award-winning business with a good reputation. So, and say, we've got great staff. I mean, really good people, and it'd be nice for them to be able to continue in the work that they enjoy.
Absolutely. I think, I was speaking to one of my clients, some time ago, and they said something great to me, and I was referring to their business, and I was saying, like your business. He said, Simon, let me stop you there. He said, it's not my business, and he was the owner of the business. He said, I'm just the steward of this business for the current time. It's my job to pass this business on in some shape, way, or form. As you say, whether it's selling it, passing it to the next generation, in a better condition than when it was set up or when I bought into it. And I thought that's a great way of looking at it, isn't it? That actually the business carries on, the business survives, and we're just the stewards of it for a certain period of time. So that really resonated with me when that.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a very mature attitude, and I think and particularly if you're able to let go. I know I've met a lot of business people over the years. I'm sure you have, where, as I mentioned earlier, it's their baby, and that they really struggle to hand it over. And even if they have sort of retired, they are kind of a shadow on the current owners, and that may be a family member back, and that can cause problems. I mean, they're interested, and they've given birth to it, if you like, or been a midwife to it. But I think if you're able to sort of step back saying, look, I've set something up, I've now passed it to these other people or another person, and they're going to make different decisions to you. They will not say be better or worse, but they'll be different because they think differently, and you've got to let them do that. It's a bit like, with children, you give them a set of rules, and they come to a stage in their life where they are, able to make their own decision, and they'll take some of the rules that you've given them, and they will reject some of those, and they'll make their own rules. And I think that's part of, evolution, and them growing, and you saying, okay, I've done my bit for this. Let's see how you get with it.
And look, well, there's one question that I like to ask everybody that's kind enough to join me for this discussion, and that's this: what is the best advice that you would give to an 18-year-old you?
Yeah, I did give that. I find that actually, when I saw the sort of in prep, that was, to be honest with you, the hardest question there. And I think the reason being is this. I mean, inevitably, you're looking back at an 18-year-old self with what you know now, which you didn't, of course, know then, and you make decisions based on the information you have at the time, and it's all very easy to look back. The other reason it was a struggle is that my main thing at 18 is I just couldn't wait to leave home.
Yeah.
That was a really, really big thing for me. I just couldn't stand being there, and it was important that I left. But I think if I was trying to sort of bring it back to the 18-year-old, I'd probably say don't be afraid to back yourself.
I like it. Yeah, good.
To take a few more risks. I mean, because the safe route isn't always the best one. And don't stress about fitting in. I've probably never fitted in my life, not deliberately, but it's just the way I felt. And certainly, as I mentioned earlier, not fitting into a corporate world is part of what pushed me into starting the business. And I think it probably turned out to be the best thing, or the second best thing, should we say, that ever happened, apart from my 5 daughters, I suppose. If I don't mention them, I'll go, Dad, you didn't say this. But yeah. So I think that'd be my thing is take risks, back yourself, and because at that stage you've got very little to lose because you haven't built anything up. It's harder as you get older and you've got the trappings of success or life, mortgage, family, and so on. And of course, there's more people relying on you. Whereas at 18, you don't really have any of that. So that is a good time to.
I think that's a great bit of advice, Will, and thank you for that. In terms of don't be afraid to back yourself. Take some risks, etc. So, yeah, great bit of advice. So, look, Will, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your business, but also your journey as well. So, thank you very much for that.
It's a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it, Simon. So, thank you for asking me.